So here's what we're doing today. This stunning platter. And I'm just going to kind of walk through how it's done first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to base coat first because we need the background dry for us to do the silk screens. So we're going to base coat this with 3 coats of antique white. Okay, it's a foundations glaze. Foundations glazes were designed to be the background or the foundation to your artwork. Okay, so we're going to be using this and our best friend, Mr. Soft Fan Brush, which I absolutely adore because we get nice big coverage. We're going to then take our pattern and we're going to trace on the big leaves. So we have placement. Then we're going to silk screen on leaves. We'll start painting. I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can color these in until you find your style. We'll do a little bit of splattering, and you will paint the back of this with 3 coats of the foundation antique white, but you can do that after this workshop. I never do the back at the same time when I'm doing a workshop because I want this glaze to dry. If we painted both sides, we trap that moisture into the bisque and it takes longer for this to dry so we can move on. All right, so you can do that afterwards. That's just seminar. We could have asked you to prime this, or I mean, base coat both sides, but we're finding that people are not getting all of our emails. So we're just going to do it in class. Okay, so I'm going to set this a little bit aside. You're going to get your beautiful hand. All right, so we have this beautiful platter. Hopefully you have dusted it off with either a damp sponge. I just have my towel that I'm going to be using because I get glaze all over myself. You're going to get your foundations opaque. It's going to be solid coverage, non-toxic, lead-free, food safe. And we have the AP seal on here, meaning in the liquid state it's non-toxic. So anybody can use this, children of all ages. 8 to 80, you got it going. Shake this up. If you've taken my sessions before, you know that I always recommend painting off of a palette because I want that brush to be plumped up and full. And if you paint out of a pot, people tend to rake it across and not get enough glaze on here. If you have a fan, go ahead and get that ready also because we can put it under the fan so that it dries quicker. And I'm actually set and have my fan. Okay, I'm using the number 8 reflection brush line. Reflections means that it's the acrylic handle. I could use the CB ceramic brush line if I wanted to, which has the wooden handle, but I went with the 8 instead of the 6 because can you see the size difference? This one's going to give me faster coverage. Either one works fine, whatever you have. Because it is a natural hair bristle, I'm going to prime it with a little bit of water. You know, just like when you wash your hair, you get your hair wet first and then you add product. We're going to load the brush up, bad boy, load that up. Okay, plump it up like a ballpark Frank. And I'm going to do nice long brush strokes to lay down a coat of glaze. Okay, so when you lay this down, and that's where a lot of times new glazers don't understand that we are using basically a glass, liquid glass, and we're trying to encapsulate this earthenware bisque, which is highly porous, so that it is dinnerware safe. All right, so we're going to do 3 coats of this. You can do the inside of the handle or you can leave it. Now the directions are going to say paint the inside black. I say that's artist choice. You can do it creamy antique white, or you can do black, whatever you want to do. Just don't do like 6 coats. Pick which color you're going to do. Maybe go ahead and hit it with 1 coat of antique and then come back and you'll do 2 to 3 coats of black. All right, so I have my first beautiful coat on here. Because it is so porous, it is going to absorb really fast, but I'm going to stick this under the fan just so we can get our coats going really quick. Mako's definition is dry is when the shine is off the glaze, not bone dry, because you want a little bit of tooth to grab that next coat of glaze. So by having it still just an itty bitty bit damp, it'll grab hold of that next coat of glaze and hold on really nicely. All right. And again, you guys, this can be interactive. Unmute yourself if you have questions or put it in the chat. Krista is really good about monitoring and answering directly. Every once in a while, I look up and I'll see something and I can answer it for everybody. Okay. What's nice about this design also is you can take segments of this and do matching mugs or bowls and make a really pretty setting.
I love taking elements of a larger design like a platter or something and putting it on a piece to go with it. So it's not all 100% matchy-matchy, but it has some elements of it.
I agree. I don't like the matchy-matchy. I like them to look like they belong, but a little different.
Yeah.
Little surprises.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many elements of this to work with. I mean, you have the bigger, bolder leaves, you have these background looking leaves. I mean, once we get into it, you'll start thinking of ideas. So if you guys think of ideas of ways you would do this as we move along, I'd love to hear them. You know, you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat or whatever. We'd love to hear how you would work this into your business.
Yeah. And I'm all about creating little vignettes. When I had my studio, that was one of the things that I liked the most. This thing just drives me crazy. Here, let me come over here. The shine is off. I do have a couple of areas where it's still a little wet, but I would say I'm 90% on the dry side. So I'm going to go ahead and use my big, beautiful fan brush. I love me a fan brush. I'm telling you, they're not cheap. I got to say that it's a little bit of an investment when you get a bunch of fan brushes, but if you clean them on a regular basis, at least once a week, let them dry flat and keep that glaze out of the ferrule, this little metal thing, you know, get the glaze out of there, because if you leave that glaze in there, that's what gives you that Vulcan greeting. So that's what causes those hairs to split. So just make sure you clean that glaze out of the ferrule. Let it dry flat, because when you let it dry straight up and down, that's when all this product goes back down into the ferrule, causing it to split. So if you really maintenance your brushes, they can last for years. I am putting this on thick. I think I could actually probably get away with 2 coats, but every time I try that, I have a horrible background.
Teddy, do you recommend using soap and water to clean your brushes?
Yeah, if Mako used to have a fantastic brush cleaner. We don't anymore. So I switched over to a mild dishwashing detergent, or even baby shampoo would work really nicely, because it's a very soft soap on these natural hair bristles. So yeah, I would use that.
I remember Mike Harbridge from Royal Brush saying one time about cleaning your brushes. And he was saying, you know, treat them like you would your head. Basically, you don't want to just put it in some crazy scalding water and, you know, take good care of it. You don't want to smash it around when you're cleaning it. Just be really gentle when you're cleaning them, like you're doing with your hands right now, just kind of working the soap through.
Yeah, John Dean he did this funny thing. So he'd put the soap in his hand. He's like, hula your brush in there, work it in there and let it hula. And that way you'd work all the soap up into the ferrule. And then when you rinse it with just cool water, and the key really is to shape it. Now, if I got brushes that were really split badly, a lot of times I would clean them good, and then I would just leave them with the soap in it overnight. Then the next day, rinse it and shape it, and I could get it back to good usable form. So that's just some little tips and tricks, but trying to get it back. What kills me is if somebody's jamming it, because of this sharp edge right here, it will cut your bristles, and you'll see you know, how it gets short right there. That drives me crazy. So it was typically the adults. The kids were really good once I explained it to them. So if an adult kept doing that, I'd give him one more chance, and I would show him one of my worst brushes. You know, they're all gnarly, and I say, you have to paint with this one if you keep jamming it. You know, don't make me take this away from you. And then they would get it. The kids were really good about reprimanding the parents. This
Yeah,
one is
kids like to
dyed.
follow the rules generally.
Yeah, they are. They're real good about listening.
Mhm.
All right. So I put my second coat under the fan. Hopefully you guys are too. With us putting 3 coats on the bisque, we're encapsulating all of this low fire bisque, and it's going to make it dinnerware safe. Can you see the gloss on here? That is just the glaze itself, the stroke and coat and the foundations. It's a fritted glaze. It's going to be glossy. You do not need to put clear glaze on here. So I like doing stuff like this where the customer base coats the entire piece, especially if you're in a workshop, because when this is finished, this goes straight in the kiln onto a stilt, into the kiln, and you're done. You don't have to spend extra time clear glazing, okay? So that's why all the pieces I do foundations first so that I don't have to clear glaze. It just saves me a lot of time.
Yeah, and I've always talked about this. I've probably talked about it during our foundations Zoom, that if you have some basic pieces or, essential classic pieces during the busy season already pre-glazed with stroke and coat, foundations, just like white foundations, then your customer can come in and decorate it, and then you pop it into the kiln. They can put their stroke and coat on top. If it's not a food thing, they can put their jungle gems on top, and then you can just throw it in the kiln.
Mm-hmm.
And you saved Christmas. How high can you fire foundations glaze? Do you have an indicator on your little thing there?
Let me see here. So every one of the bottles will give you a special notes on here. So we know that this has been taken up to cone 6. This particular color doesn't change. Some others may, and I don't have any other bottles in front of me. I want to say it may go up to a 10 and change, but I would have to go on Mako's website to verify, because I don't do 10 firing. But I do know that you can take it up to a 6, and you can also use it on clay. So if you're doing some hand building, it'll work on clay as well. If you're trying to do a one-time firing on a decorative hand-built piece, foundations and stroke and coat will both work.
And so you can find out easily if you go to our website. Every color that we have on there will show, if you actually click on the actual color, like foundations white or black or whatever color, it'll show you what it looks like at 06. Like these are formulated primarily for 06. It'll also show you what it does at 6. So you don't have to have the bottle in your hand. The information is on the website for every color.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lillian, yes, you can base coat with stroke and coat. And actually, this project originally was written up to be base coated with stroke and coat. Like the front of it was stroke and coat, the back was foundation. And I changed it to make this class easier with all foundations, because foundations dries faster. It goes on smooth and easy. I find that customers can get a good background on there faster than with stroke and coat, because stroke and coat is a little more thicker, viscous, I think is the proper way of saying it, but it'll work. So when we first started manufacturing foundations, a lot of the colors match, like red in foundation line is SC74 Hot Tamale. So some of them match, but we also have some really pretty colors in the foundation line that do not exist in stroke and coat. So yeah, stroke and coat, 3 coats over the entire piece of bisque. You've encapsulated it. You're going to get the glossy fine finish, just like with foundations. But foundations, in my opinion, is a lot easier to get a good, smooth, quick background, because really everybody wants to get to the fun decorating part and they don't want to do the background. I have some dampness, but I'm going to go ahead and load my brush up. And that's another reason why I like the bigger one, is because I'm not doing a lot of brush strokes. I'm just laying this down onto mine. and I'm going to get out the silk screens that we used. So we have 2 leaves on here. I'm pretty sure this is an oak leaf, and I don't know what kind of tree that is, but we have 2 different leaves on here. If you wanted to use other leaves off of this set, that is fine with me. This is your artwork. It's all about learning the process and working with silk screens. You can also silk screen on stoneware. Yesterday, I did a live demo on Mako's Facebook page. It's Mako's Stoneware for PYLP Studios. So I showed a project. Oh, I've got it right, sitting right here. So if you want to use any of these other designs on here, I don't care. You know, you're the artist, you can do it. So when you purchase the silk screens, it comes in one big old sheet, and there's a lot of instructions. I would go through the instructions and read through it in case it's your first time. So it's one big 8.5 by 11 sheet, and they're difficult to see. It's a little tricky because this is a different process than you will find other silk screen manufacturers. This is thermal something. So they're actually burning the silk screen fabric, and they burning out the design. So when we silk screen, we're only letting the product go through where the image is. So here's some tips and tricks that we have learned, and a big shout out to Bev Scarborough and her team. They're the ones that figured out that a way to dye or stain, I should say, the silk screen. Oh, and we're going to use you're going to take a dry erase marker. So, or it's a whiteboard marker. And I thought this was really interesting because to me, I thought it would go away. So why would we do it? So you can see that I've prepped one of the screens already. Look how easy you can see the design as compared to here. So let's say I'm going to do this pine cone. If you look at your silk screen, there is one side that is really, it's slick, it's glossier, and there's hardly any texture. The other side, I can feel where the fibers are woven together, and it's more textured, it's a little more matte. So when we silk screen with shiny side down. Shiny side down won't make you frown. Shiny side down won't make you frown. Okay, but to prep your screen, we're going to colorize the shiny side. So I'm going to take my dry erase marker, and I'm literally going to color over the silk screen. Make sure you do this on a piece of paper or someplace that you don't care, because it's going to go through, right? And then I just take my towel, kitchen towel, paper towel, whatever, and wipe it off. Now I can see my image. So where it's real dark, it's going to let more product through than where it's not as dark. So I like this little fir branch right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to colorize it. And make sure it's the shiny side, and I'll show you why in just a second. All right, so I've colorized that. Wipe off the excess. And now I have an image that it's very easy for anybody to use and to see, okay? Now, when you're finished doing the silk screening, we're going to drop it into a bowl of water and let it sit to clean it. And I'll go into that just a little bit more. Okay. But so you can wash this over and over and over. And the beauty is where it has, the fibers have been stained, will last for quite a while. If it starts getting faded where you can't see it very well, just do it again. Get your dry erase marker and stain it. So I typically use a Sharpie and draw around my piece like this, so that if I get my product out to the line, I know I've covered this. And then I cut my pieces out. See what so I've got this to use, which is a lot easier than trying to maneuver this large piece everywhere. There was something I was going to tell you. And then we cut it out. Oh yes, let me show you how I store my pieces, because once you have these cut out, then what are you going to do with them? You have all these random little bits. I have a notebook that we created, and I put a little directory in the front of it. These are all Avery, and then just bought these page protectors. So I take the image, which you guys, the images on here are not true to size. It's just enough to show you what's in the packet. So don't think that this is going to be the actual size. And then in the back of the page protector, I have all of my images, and they're colorized. And I usually write what they are also, so that if I can read that lighthouse, I know that is the side that goes up. So I'm not always looking and saying, oh my God, which side's shiny, which side down. They're all ready to go. So then you're ready to have them. And then once I wash them in cool water, I just pat them dry. They go right back into their page protector. They're not curling up. They're not lost. Well, I still have managed to lose them because I don't put things up right away, but I have everything in one spot. So that works really well for me. So I had it one where, see how this says staff only? That's because I had a second binder with just the images, so customers could say, oh, I want this anchor. And then staff could go get the anchor out of here, and we knew who had the silkscreen, so that the customers just weren't grabbing these willy-nilly. Do you have any questions? Can you use something besides a dry erase marker? I don't have one. This is what we have found works the best so far. I don't know, because Sharpies will stain it and not come out. We tried dyeing these. We tried just about everything. And it was Bev Scarborough who figured out the dry erase marker. They're pretty easy to get at any kind of business store. And you don't have to do that today. That is just a tip for you to use in the future. Okay. The other thing I was going to tell you, oh, I know what it was. So I said to make sure when you're coloring them to do it on the shiny side because it wipes off. This is what happens if you try to color it on the slick dark side. So I color, and then I go to wipe off the excess. It will not come off. Now you haven't ruined it. You can still use it, but it totally defeats the purpose because the whole thing is going to be black. And what we're trying to do is see your image. So you saw on the dark side, it doesn't come off. On the shiny slick side, I can color over this again. And the slick side, it just wipes right off. And I have a pretty little image, and it doesn't obstruct our product going through. Okay. Would a watercolor marker work? I do not know. Oh, I have not tried the dry erase marker cleaner on the non-shiny side. Ooh, I'm going to make a note to try that. Hold on as I write down my note. Have you tried it, Krista?
I have not.
Okay.
I have definitely ruined a lot, putting it on the wrong side.
It's so frustrating. And I've done it when I'm demonstrating, saying, okay, make sure you get the shiny side. And then I mark the wrong side, even in a live situation. So if you want to change out and use some of these other ones on here, that's, go for it. That's fun. Definitely. All right. All right. I'm going to get another plate so that we can mix up our product. You're going to want to get your AC-310 Silkscreen Medium. You're going to need to get your colors of SC34 Down to Earth and SC-34 Army surplus. Now that is what the directions call for. If you want to go a little lighter, if you think that the down to earth is a little darker than you want, you're free to use, any of the colors in here. It's all about the learning process. All right, so let me get another plate. So we're going to mix up our Silkscreen medium, and this is really good because right now, my plate is under the fan. So this is going to, this gives us a little bit of time to deal with that drying and continue on in the process. So to mix up the product, because if we used stroke and coat directly on the Silkscreen, it's going to run through and it's going to bleed. So we don't want to do that. We need to turn it into a paste. Okay. I had 2 Silkscreens just a few minutes ago. I haven't gone anywhere. And now I've already misplaced that one. Oh my. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix this stuff up. If you have a palette knife handy, that'll work really well. I'm going to use the back of my reflection brush because see how it is angled, and it's kind of a nice little palette knife there. You can use a knife, you can use your finger. So I'm going to squeeze out about the size of a nickel the Army surplus and a little bit of down to earth because that's what we're going to be silk screening with. And you can see down to earth is a little thicker. It's just the chemical properties of it. And the Army surplus is a little thinner. Each glaze seems to have its own viscosity, its own little personality. So what we do is we use just a little bit of the Silkscreen medium. I mean, this pot could probably last you easily a year because you literally are just going to take a little bit and sprinkle it over your glaze. Now, when we first started doing this, somebody asked me, can you put too much Silkscreen medium? And I'm like, well, no, I've never had that happen. By golly, they proved me wrong. They jumped on so much on here that when they started mixing it up, I mean, you had to keep adding and adding and adding glaze to get it to become a paste instead of rock hard. What happens is I learned if you put way too much Silkscreen medium into this in the very beginning, when you silkscreen onto your piece, it can make the glaze crawl back a little bit. I don't see it very often, but when it does happen, it's because people were trying to turn their paste into their product into a paste too quickly. So I sprinkled this on and I'm going to start mixing up. We're going to look for the consistency of smooth peanut butter, not chunky. Okay, no chunks. The more you mix this, you're introducing the air, and the Silkscreen medium works, doing its job, which is to absorb the moisture out of the glaze. Now this is going to mix up a little bit easier because it's sitting a little bit longer, okay? All right, this is taking a while. I'm going to add just a little bit more Silkscreen medium on here.
One thing that somebody told me is if you think of Silkscreen medium as like salt, and you're salting your food, you add a little bit at the time because you could always add more.
That's a good one. Good one. Love analogies.
Here's a question. Do you have to add Silkscreen if your paint is too thick? Yes, you want to add the Silkscreen medium, even if your paint is a little thick, just because it's going to thicken it up to the right consistency so it doesn't go through. Even though the stroke and coat may be thicker than another stroke and coat, you're going to need it to have this stiffer consistency.
I do have to tell on myself. I found a little pot of stroke and coat in my garage that was like 6 years old, and it was really, really thick. So I tried it with the Silkscreen and it worked. I mean, it was like the perfect consistency already. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, this one was really old, so it had dried out. But I'm
Right.
like, well, look at that. You know,
I've
but
also used it for with acrylics. You know, it's really good to, I've used acrylic paint with Silkscreen Medium on a shirt, which was very cool.
yeah, just got to clean that silk screen right away so that the acrylic, that stuff is wicked. I swear we could weaponize that acrylic somehow.
It was good. It was when we did an event in the UK and we had to make our own, we made our own little fun shirts for a tie-dye, the Woodstock event at Pot Glaze.
Oh yeah, I remember that. All right, see how this is kind of, it's peanut butter, it's thick, it's smooth, and it also kind of gives me a meringue quality. It kind of pumps up. So I'm going to move that. Now let's say we mix this stuff up and it is just perfect. And then those pesky customers come into your studio and you're gone for an hour and you come back and you're like, oh man, this is way too thick now. I had it perfect. All you have to do is add a little bit more stroke and coat to your product. Now you can use foundations, but stroke and coat is the most heavily pigmented glaze. So I tend to go with stroke and coat so that I know that I'm going to get my nice outlines. On Mako's Silkscreen, especially on our early editions, we really strove for lots of details, fine lines, shading and shadowing, because that's what's really difficult to do with the paintbrush unless you've really worked at your paintbrush skills. Okay, so you can thin it back down. If you pour way too much glaze out, you can continue to add a little bit of the AC-310 Silkscreen Medium. Now, another cool thing is if you're going to do a workshop, or let's say you yourself are going to sit down and do 10 of these plates in one sitting and the Silkscreen, you can make up a pot of this, you know, do a little batch, do a little batch. The key is to put it in a pot that is airtight. Oh, I'm so happy. So this is thin enough that it's going to go through the little burned in image, but it's not so thick that it's going to clog it up. Okay, so I'm really happy with this. If you can tell the difference the more you do this. When it's too thick, you have to really force it through the silk screen. All right, I'm going to get my plate out. It's dry enough at this point. I'm going to set my silk screen stuff to the side. I basically did that so that we had dry time here. If you were doing this just on your own, you probably wouldn't have mixed it up just yet, but we're doing a seminar, right? You got seminar teaching and, or seminar painting, and then you've got real life painting. All right, my friends. Now get your pattern out and your clay carbon paper. We've got two options here. Mine is probably damp enough that I could skip the clay carbon paper. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. I'm going to get an ink pen because I like the fact that it's got that rigid tip. If you look at my sample, it took me a minute. I was just like, all right, this doesn't work. The leaves and the pattern are not exactly how you lay it out. So you're going to have your big leaf where you want it, and then you're going to move the pattern around to different areas to get your leaves on there. So this leaf goes up against the handle. You may need to put some darts into your pattern so that it doesn't pucker so much. You know, like when this is up against there, a couple little darts here and there would make it lay down a little bit easier. All right. So what I'm going to show you is, because my glaze is still a little on the damp side, I could lay down my big leaf right here. And just by pressing and going over the pattern, it's leaving a line where I can see this. Okay, so I'm just going to trace out my pattern. If yours is bone dry, you're going to put the clay carbon paper down first, put your pattern on top of it, and trace. But make sure you test to make sure that you have the correct side down on the platter with the clay carbon paper. Only one side of clay carbon paper transfers. So you need to test it. Clay carbon paper does not work very well over damp glaze. Boy. But mine's a little too damp. I'm gonna look at that. Look at how I boogered that up. So I'm going to put this back under the fan if you run into this also. But see how it gouged into the glaze? Here it's not transferring so well. So I rushed it a little bit. So I'm going to put this back under the fan and let this section dry a little bit more because I took off more glaze than what I really wanted. If you want to cut out these pieces and lay it underneath your clay carbon paper to trace on, that's fine too. You can go back onto Mako's website, print off as many of these as you want. And I think we talked about this at one other time, is you can have this pattern printed onto your clay carbon paper. Clay carbon paper, you can use it over and over. You can see mine is well worn, used, and abused. And I cheated again, a little too fast. Pulled up my glaze, but you can have this printed on here. If you just need a few, you can run it through your own printer. If you need a bunch, I would take it to some copy place because it can gum up your printer at some point because of the transfer. And you can see here, I wrote up so that I know that this is the side that goes up. So when I lay my pattern on here and trace, it's going to transfer on. Let me know if anybody has any questions. Oh, my Diet Dr. Pepper is just my.
So Teddy, we're having a little, I was messaging with some folks on here about clay carbon paper. We like it because it's made especially for ceramics. You know, it's not waxy like regular carbon paper can have the kind of a waxy finish and make your design resist. Here's also another question about graphite pencils rubbed on the back of a pattern and then transfer the images that way. Do you have experience with that?
Yeah, I've not done that. I've tried it because somebody else contacted me and said that's what they do, and it does work. So if that's what you want to do, that's fine. A lot of other people, what they'll do is they'll take the pattern, put tissue paper over it, use a Sharpie, draw it out, and then they put the pattern back on here and trace over it again with the Sharpie. So, you know, there's a million ways to get to the end of the race or get it on there. If you found something that works for you, you just go ahead and continue doing that. Just remember, by you not buying this clay carbon paper, you were not contributing to my retirement fund. I mean, don't want to make you feel guilty or anything.
Well, one thing I like about the clay carbon paper, and I have also done that where you trace the design onto tissue paper and then use the Sharpie to transfer it, and the tissue paper kind of bleeds through the tissue paper onto your piece. But I do like that you can print directly onto the clay carbon paper. It's the same size that will fit into your printer. So you can print your design on there and then you just hand it to your customer and you're just giving out one piece of paper as opposed to multiple pieces of paper.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I like that also, but you know, so many ways to get it done. You know, I had problems using Sharpies because I found that it didn't always burn off. But then I have other people say, I've never had problem with a Sharpie not burning off. So, you know, as long as it works for you, we just try to give you some best practices or from our experience. But yeah, I've seen somebody do that graphite and it worked really well and they didn't have any problems. So
I actually, before I knew about clay carbon paper in my studio, which was, you know, years ago, I actually would buy graphite paper at the art supply store because I didn't want to use carbon paper and we didn't have clay carbon at the time. So I was using graphite paper, but it was very expensive. So I would think a graphite pencil would work just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So everybody has to do what's good for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think the longer you've been doing ceramics, there's been different tips and tricks along the way. So yeah, there's very few things that I'm going to say, no, you can never do it that way. Plus, you guys, we just go nanny, nanny, boo, boo and do it what you want anyway. All right, so if yours is dry enough, go ahead and get your pattern on there. I'm going to try some of the other areas that aren't quite so wet. I don't want to sit here and watch glaze dry all day long though. This is actually opposite on the pattern that you, or the directions. This was actually brown and this was green, and I just, got a little crazy when I got started. And so it all works, I guess is what I'm saying. Today I'm going to cut it up, make it a little bit easier. You can always print off more, tucking it underneath. So I have my leaves on there. So now that I know that the coal goes there, lay it down and then trace it that way. Makes it a little bit easier. I'm not tracing on the veins because we're basically painting over it and adding the veins later. So I have my pattern on here, and like on this leaf, it's kind of like it's behind the big leaf, the silk screening on here. What I like about using two different colored silk screens is from a distance, it gives it more dimension. So this is nice and light. This one's a little bit darker. Then you have your vibrant leaves here. So you're creating layers of depth by doing the various colors. So I'm going to do it like the picture. You can do also. So I have this leaf, and the original directions had this one brown. So I'm going to try to follow it, even though I did it opposite here. So I'm going to lay them out in different areas, and sometimes I'll use the stem, sometimes I'll tuck it behind. So on my big leaf right here, sorry, I just don't have enough room for all of this. On my big leaf, I'm going to silk screen it, but I'm going to have part of it. So this part right here is really behind this leaf. So I'm going to put my finger on here. I'm going to do shiny side down, and I'm going to take my Silkscreen Medium that I've already mixed up. It's a little bit drier, but it's still good. It's still nice and meringue-like. I'm going to scoop some up with my finger. You can use a squeegee. I use my finger because I don't have to look for the squeegee. So I'm going to start in the center, and I'm just going to come down and around because I can see my leaf design. I start in the center, and what I'm doing is I'm pushing the product through that opening, okay? And because I can see my black leaf, it makes it easier. So if I started out here and it flipped up, I can let that sit back down and smooth it out because it didn't slide, because I've got this death grip with my left hand. So now what I can do is lift this up and I can peek. I'm like, oh, look how pretty that is. Now I didn't get quite up as close as I wanted to on this leaf, so I'm just going to come back over it just a little bit closer. And I've pushed that through there. I love these. So now I'm just going to kind of figure out where I want some brown leaves. All right. Typically you want to do uneven numbers, 3, 5, 7, or whatever. That looks a little bit better. So I'm going to just look around and see where else do I want some brown. So I've got this one peeking out. I'm going to take the same silk screen because my medium isn't too thick. And I'm going to have it going off of this right now. So I've set it down. I've got my fingers holding it, starting in the center. I'm going to rub and push this medium product through here, and I'm going to get my stem this time. If I don't have enough, I'll just pick some up on my finger again, rub it on here. Didn't get it up as high as I wanted, so I let it back down. Let's peek again. Oh my gosh, I feel like such an artist when I do this. Okay. And so you can usually do 3 good times before you need to wash this. Now my medium is fairly thin, so I bet I can get more than 3 without washing this. So if you get yours where it's just gunking up and it's not transferring, you do a peek and it's like it's not going through it all, take it to the sink, run some cool water over it, rinse it off. You can use a sponge. You never want to scrub these because that can break all of the little threads in the burned out area of the design. And then pat it dry and then come back and do it again. So far mine is actually working the way I want it to. So now I'm going to take it and I'm going to lay it this way. I'm going to give myself a bigger leaf design. Start in the center, work my way out. By going circular, it just prevents it from flipping up and doing this number to me. It always freaks me out when that happens because I'm afraid I'm going to ruin it. I'm on a curve, so I kind of do sections at a time, and I worked my way up. See how it just flipped up on me? But look how beautiful that is. And the cool thing is there is no glaze whatsoever on this back side, because the only glaze that's transferring is going onto my plate. This is where my glaze is on the front side of it. So I've got 3 of these right now in brown. I can't handle it. I got to do one more. So I'm going to do, where do I want it? Over here. Let's do it over here. On a curve again, hold it, work my way out, kind of pushing it through. Let's peek. That's looking good. So now I'm not going to use this brown one for a while. So I'm going to just drop it in my little pot of water and let it soak, because I'm not going to use it for a bit. The longer these silk screens soak in water, the easier they are to clean. Seriously, if you leave it like an hour and you pull it out, all that glaze is just going to run right off into the sink, and you don't have to worry about scrubbing it. If you forget to clean it and you let it dry overnight on your silk screen, soak it. Don't try to force clean it, okay? Now I'm going to go to my other leaf with my green that we mixed up. It's still looking pretty good. See, it's a little meringue-like, it's smooth. It's not too dry. It's not so dry that I'm going to have to try and force it. And it does take a little bit of practice. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. On getting the silk screen to the consistency you want. But once you get it, you're going to know it. All right, so I'm going to put this leaf here. I'm just kind of making up my design as I go. Start in the center, rubbing it through. Because this is a lighter color, I can see my stained silk screen underneath. Again, it's shiny side down. If I accidentally put shiny side up, what is going to happen is it lets more product through and you lose all the shading. So you have an option at that point of whether you want to leave it, wipe it off and redo your background, or just say, I can tolerate that. Okay, so that's why we say shiny side down, is because it's going to give you the highlights, the low lights, darker, lighter. It gives you all those things that I find very difficult to do with the brush. So the reason why we traced our pattern on first is so that we can work around our designs with our silk screen, so we're not competing with each other. And I love the fact that you can lift it up and peek. And if you don't have enough on there, lay it back down, as long as it doesn't get out of design. Scooch. Who else feels like a pro right at the moment?
I do. I'm watching like a pro.
Yeah, and you can just, change your design up a little bit. Really gives it some visual interest by moving the leaves and not being very consistent or matchy.
I really like the idea. I think you might have mentioned this of having like lighter colors for some leaves and then this darker color because it adds the depth to it, like the layers. I think that's pretty cool.
I know. I really think that's what makes this really
Mhm.
work, going from just pretty fall leaves that if we painted to extraordinary, because you do have the highs and lows. It's kind of like scrapbooking where they added so many different layers.
Yeah. And they don't have to be perfect either. I love that about the leaves, they're nature. They're not all perfect looking. It's nice. I mean, yours look great, but what I'm saying is they
Yeah,
don't
yeah, I
have
know
to
what
be
you mean.
perfect.
No.
'Cause I know mine wouldn't be, but I love that
Oh,
about it. And it's
well,
nice that you can
mine
use that
aren't.
screen over and over again. You can't always do that depending on the project that you're doing. Like if you're trying to get something in a specific spot, but this is great.
Yeah, this is working out. I'm just kind of lucked out that I've been getting the exact right. It just, if you can see, and the more you do this, you guys are just going to know it. But I mean, look how nice that is. It's just creamy so that it's going to go through my silk screen. And because it's creamy enough, I've been able to use this. So I've done it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I'm going to do my 5th leave and then call it a quits on silk screening, because I could probably do this all day long.
While you're doing that, there's a question that says, can you use stroke and coat to glaze over the silk screen image? Will the silkscreen medium show through the applied stroke and coat? So if you were going to try to colorize your silk screens, there's different ways, but like say Teddy wanted to do this and she silk screened in black, then what she would probably do is take her stroke and coat and just put one coat of stroke and coat to fill in the leaves, and you could still see your stroke and coat black lines. But if you wanted to do multiple layers of stroke and coat, you would cover up your design because it's so highly pigmented. If you did that though, you could go back in and silk screen over it again with your black or whatever darker color. There is a technique for adding color to stroke and coat. I'm sorry, to a silk screen. I'm not sure if Teddy's going to talk about it here.
So let's use my pretty fern here because I like this fern. It's already colorized and ready to go. The only thing I would probably do is just write up on here so that I know I don't have to guess each time. So what we can do is I'm going to use tuxedo black this time. Show you how you can colorize. We tend to use black a lot just because it's a good outline. And that's why I really liked this project. It's more like a scrapbooking where you're doing the depth and layers and showing you that you can just use a little bit of color. But all right, so I'm going to mix up a little bit of black here, use my Silkscreen Medium. Take me just a second to get this mixed up. I put a little bit more black than I probably needed for this.
We had a question and I answered it on the chat, but I'll say it here. Somebody asked, like, what if you silk screen before you did your background color? Which is totally fine. If you're just silk screening on your bisque directly, after you do your design, you could always do like a foundation sheer. There's a lot of different colors there. You could use a Spectaclear color like the autumn one, or even just clear glaze over it. So you don't have to have that foundation's background. Another alternative to the glossy foundations background is to use one of the matte foundations and then have your glossy stroke and coat on top. Would be really pretty.
That's really pretty.
Can you store the mixed silkscreen medium for a long time? Yeah, what we do sometimes in one studio up in Ohio, Diane Height has a coloring mine up there in Dublin, Ohio. She has little plastic pots and she has all the different colors mixed with silkscreen medium. And so that way, when a customer wants to use it, it's ready. It's great. I love that. And so Marcia, when she was working at Mako, before she retired, she would mix some up on a plate and then cover it with saran wrap if she had to go out and do something really quick and then come back and it'd be fine. So I actually do silk screening on mugs for something that I do on the side. and I keep them in a little airtight container. And every time I go back, my Silkscreen mediums and mixtures all ready to go.
Mhm.
And if it does start to get a little dried out, you just add a little bit more color in there.
Exactly.
Good question.
Okay, so this time I'm using black because this is going to give me my outline. Again, I'm using my left hand to hold it down. I don't know what the deal is, but I am just nailing it on creating the perfect consistency. There are some days that I'm just like, whoa, I can't do it. But I guess those are like the days that you have a real shaky hand. You can't do fine details. Anyway, this is working out really nice. So I have my details on here. Let's peek, hold it in place.
Ooh,
Yeah, that turned out nice.
nice.
All right, so I'm not going to do this again. So I'm just going to stick it in my pot of water so that it's soaking. So now I could take and come back and colorize this. So I could use any of my stroke and coats. I'm going to pour out a little green thumb, and I'll pour out a little bit Army Surplus so that I have a couple of colors going on here. And I'm going to grab oh, this will work. I've got a round filler in front of me. I'm just going to get my brush wet because it's natural hair bristle. And I can take my brush. Ooh, I'm going to have to get a little brush. Okay, so I went with a liner this time. So what I can do is put one coat, a stroke and coat over this. The black is so heavily pigmented, this is kind of thick right here, that it's going to stay black. One coat of stroke and coat is typically watercolorish. It's not as opaque as if you put 3 coats. So can you see down here that you can see my black peeking through? Right here, I got it a little bit heavy. So I'm using that as like a palette, picking up some glaze. So I can paint over it. I wouldn't do more than 1 coat, maybe 2 in some areas to give you some depth. Now I'm not going to paint the back of this. I'm just going to put clear over it because I have this pretty design on the bottom. Okay, so you can colorize, you know, and I can pick up a couple of colors here. I could even come in, if I was turning colors, add some of the cantaloupe on here. But that's an easy way of colorizing it. Now, what we've also done, this is a little bit, this one will work good. So I've got my hydrangea here. So what I have done before is I'll silk screen this onto a piece of paper, because what I'm doing is I'm creating a pattern. Okay. Once I have it on the paper, then I photocopy it, and I have these patterns that are the exact same size as the silk screen. And I can cut it out, or cut it out of the paper, adhere it to the plate, and then paint the background so that I have the exact size of my image. Okay, I went with something a little bit bigger. So I don't really care about the details. What I would do now is I would cut this out. And it's going to be like color blocking or masking. Let's see, just ignore those leaves because I don't want to spend a lot of time being futzy. And normally I would cut this out a little bit better, but I'm just kind of hurrying so that you guys aren't watching me cut paper for the next 20 minutes. So I'm just cutting on the outline. The details on the interior make no difference whatsoever. We're going to add those in. All right. So now I have my design. We're just going to paint over the fern just so I can show you. So now what I could do is I could do it a couple of ways. I could add a little background color, kind of stick it into that just so it's stuck down nice and good. And then take any other color and paint around it. So all right. Okay, so I start from the center out, seal down my hydrangea pattern. And then I could do 3 coats of whatever color. I'm just using what's handy right now. Okay. So I do 3 coats of this color. I basically masked off the hydrangea where you're not going to get any other color underneath that. And that's why when I paint these this way, I start from the paper out. If I push up against that paper, I could push the color underneath it. So pretend I have 3 coats on here now. Then I lift off my paper and I have the area of the hydrangea. I can come in now with any colors that I want and start colorizing my hydrangea. Normally I would do pinks and purples, but I have greens in here. So I'm going to colorize my hydrangea. Okay. And it's exact same size. This is going to be one ugly hydrangea because of the colors I'm using, but we're just going for process right now. Okay. I'm going to stick this under the fan just so I can get it dark and dry enough to show you. And then what I'm going to do once this is all painted is I will lay down my silk screen over this to get all my details. So really what I'm doing is I'm just creating a pattern so that I can add details. So that's painted. All right, let me stick that under a fan for a second. Where'd my hydrangea go? Oh, here it is. I'm going to hope that this is not too dry. Let me go rinse it off while that's drying. Be right back.
So another way that you can colorize things, this is really great way that Teddy's doing it because she's also able to get a background color around that hydrangea. If you say you're just doing wanted to do some brightly colored leaves on a piece that doesn't have a background color or any color around it, you can take the Silkscreen Medium and mix it with clear glaze and a little bit of food coloring, just a touch, like the gel food coloring works really well, and silk screen that onto your piece. And so say you want to make a leaf, you can use the green food coloring gel or whatever, silk screen it onto your piece, and then you just paint over that how as bright as you want, whatever. So that just gives you a little pattern to go by. And then once that's dry, you can silk screen over it again with the whatever color silk screen image you want to have. So there's a lot of different ways to do this.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just using paper as a block. You can use, like she said. So now what I would do is I would line this up. And it would typically be dry. And then silk screen over it, and I get the beautiful design on it. I used up all my medium, so hold on. So yeah, you can silk screen with clear. You can paint one coat over your image with stroke and coat. And again, I like stroke and coat over foundations because it's heavily pigmented and one coat is semi-transparent or like a watercolor. All right, so now I just silk screen over this bad boy.
It's a really great way to get a design. I really love this, especially with a design like this hydrangea, because it's such a big detailed piece. That's one thing that's really great about Mako silk screens is they're really highly detailed things that are a little harder to replicate easily, you know, with a brush or something. They're really great that way. Ooh, nice.
Not too bad. And you've got competing, but it gives you the idea of what I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay, you guys ready to start painting leaves? So on the big leaf, it is going to use cinnamon sticks, Cracker Jack brown, and cantaloupe. Okay, so those are the colors we're going to use. Again, I said I was a little disappointed. I didn't quite get my colors as bright as I would like, because if you look at this picture, there's a little bit more lightness to it. Mine is a little bit too uniform. So we're going to talk about different ways of glazing these. So put out, I don't know, let's say about the size of a quarter of cinnamon sticks. It's a really pretty color. Cracker Jack brown. Well, that was a rude sound. And cantaloupe. Okay, so I have my colors on my palette. We're going to be using the script liner. If you'll notice, in most of our workshops, we use the script liner the most, mainly because it has nice long bristles. This is the CB 106. CB is ceramic brush. Nice long bristles. Again, you're going to prime it with some water before you load it, and then pull the excess off. And with this leaf and the directions, we're going to do it this way, and then I'm going to show you some other stuff. So it says to blend the colors for the large leaf, do the cinnamon sticks on part of a leaf, blend the color into Cracker Jack brown, and then into cantaloupe. And we're going to do 2 coats of each one of those. So in this case, what we could do is start with my cinnamon sticks. See if you got that in the line. You do. I'm going to load my brush, and see it holds a lot of glaze. So in this case, we could do some color blocking. I call it color blocking, meaning, all right, I'm going to put down my cinnamon sticks. Then I'm going to pick up some of my Cracker Jack, overlapping, kind of blending it in. I don't like specific lines. It would really help if I had all my pattern on there. Just need a little visual. Okay. And then I could pick up some of my cantaloupe. This is actually one of my favorite colors. So according to the directions, and I'm going to paint over that stem. I didn't really want it going into that. So they're blending together. One coat. I always think this looks like such a hot mess the first time out, so be gentle with yourself, because I was not. All right. You can also fully load your brush, and I'm doing this with the cinnamon sticks. You can come in and side tip, so half of your brush has cinnamon sticks, half of it has the Cracker Jack brown. And what's nice about that is when you lay your brush down, I'm going to put the cinnamon sticks to the outside. And when I pull this, it's blending it for me. So I'm going to flip it over again, and I'm going to put the cinnamon stick to the outside. The Cracker Jack is on the inside. And now I can just pick up some Cracker Jacks. But it did the blending a little bit easier for me. And I'm just going to bring some of this into that. Some of the cantaloupe. All right. Okay, so I'm going to show you on this other leaf. So I'm going to load it in, and I'm not cleaning my brush. I'm going to load it in cinnamon sticks. I'm going to side load with Cracker Jack, and I'm going to tip just the tip of it with the cantaloupe. So I have 3 colors going on here now. So when I lay this down and pull it, I'm going to get a nice blending of all 3 colors. And then I turn my brush over, lay it down, pull it. And I've got a nice variation or variegation of all those colors. Now in the first coat, I'm not going to worry too much about blending. I'm going to come back because we're going to do 2 coats. All right. This cantaloupe's my favorite. Blend these down into this. So that's why I like this brush, is because, so in this next leaf, I'm going to load it with Cracker Jack. I'm going to side tip it with my cantaloupe. I'm going to put my lighter colors on the inside, lay it down, press, pull, and it lays down a nice coat of colors. Turn my brush over, pull. You get nice long brush strokes. Ooh, I like that right there. Look how that blended. It's got the lighter in here. I can see some of the cinnamon sticks here, but it's a little bit different. It looks very different than these leaves up here when I do it that way. Turn my plate. I always try to start at the top and pull down towards me. All right, this time I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to load it with cantaloupe. I'm going to side load with my Cracker Jack. I'm going to do my darker color on the outside, lay it down, press, pull, complete different blending. I like doing it like this. Man, I gouged into this color when I didn't let it dry enough. All right. So I could come back here on the next coat and make it look a little prettier. All right, so let's go back up to the front leaf, first leaf, because it says to do color by color. I like loading it better so that they're blending a little bit more. Hit my second coat. Any questions on how I'm loading my brush? You can do up to all 3 colors. You decide on what. So in this coat, I really want a little bit more of the orange because I like that the most. I'm going to load my brush up with the cantaloupe. I'm going to pick up half of the brush with Cracker Jack. Lighter color towards the inside. Ooh, I like that one. It's all personal choice, isn't it? I'm going to leave that spot right there because I like that. So after we do this, we're going to come back and put all the veins in, and that's when it really looks nice. That's when it's going to take shape. Because when I painted all of mine on here, I was not happy with it. I'm like, but then when I added the details, it came alive. So I'm going to get all my second coats on there. All right, so work on that. And then I'm going to show you another way that I got a little bit of the different look. Okay. On the smaller leaves going around, you're going to introduce some different colors, and you're going to change up how it looks by leaving a different color out. So we're going to use our green thumb and cantaloupe and cinnamon sticks. So I already have cinnamon sticks and cantaloupe on my plate. So I'm just going to add some green thumb onto my palette. So if you want to watch for just a second, and then you guys can decide how you want to glaze these. Do you want to do one side, one color, bring in the other? This is called floating in color. Okay, and a dagger brush, if you ever get hold of a dagger brush, it works really nice. It does all your work for you. So I was playing with this, and if I add a good amount of water to my brush, and then basically what I'm doing is I'm wiggling my brush just in the side. See how I just have some glaze only on one side of my script liner. So I wiggled it in there. So it's heavy on the outside, but it's really thin towards the inside. Now this time I'm going to start at the base of this, and I'm going to lay my brush down. And when I pull it, look how nicely I have the dark color on the outside, but it's real thin and kind of watery towards the inside. So if I do it again, this side, I'm going to pick up, let's say, the cantaloupe. I'm going to wiggle my brush, just the side of it, kind of wiggling, squiggling, little do a hula. I've got heavy color on the outside. It's thinned out on the inside. I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to float the darker color, which in this case is the cantaloupe, by pressing it down and pulling it. Oh, I'm almost happy. Look at that. It's almost like a watercolor. So it's darker on the outside because that's where I had the intensity on my brush on the outside. It's thinner and more watercolory on the inside. And then I have the green on there. I may or may not do a second coat because I really like that light look. So on my next leaf, if I continue on in this manner, kind of floating in my color, what I could do is change up this next one. Okay, so this goes next to it. So I'm going to load my brush with a little bit of water. I'm going to sneak up and hula my brush, and I'm flattening it out pretty good. Let's get it closer. So I'm hulaing it up in there, and I'm flattening it out. So I've got a good amount of glaze on the outside, and it's thinned off and watery on the inside. So this leaf, to make it look a little bit different, I'm going to put that cinnamon sticks on the outside, and you can see I still have some green and a little bit of yellow left because I'm not cleaning my brush. I like that. So I'm going to turn it over and do it again. And I'm kind of jiggling it because the leaves are really a little raggedy. And then I can just do nice long strokes in the center. So that's floating some color when you do it like that. Here we really just blocked it in and blended it by, loading your brush. This one's going to be a lot more solid. So this leaf is going to really pop. I think I'm going to leave these more watercolory because I like the fact that it's going to give some depth to it. So I'm just going to do that one coat because I visually like it. You could do a second coat if you wanted to, and I probably will on these leaves. And I'm going to continue to float my colors because I like the darker edges. So each leaf is going to have a different combination of the cantaloupe, the cinnamon sticks, and the green thumb. And since it's your own plate, if you choose to float in a little bit of that Cracker Jack, who's going to give you an F on the project? Absolutely nobody. So then periodically, I'm going to rinse my brush out just so that I can kind of clean it up a little bit. Let me know if you have any questions, if you want me to show you that again. I really like the look of floating that color because it gives me that crisp edge, but it thins out. And I am open to anybody else showing a way that you get some beautiful shading. So I've showed you a couple of different styles today. I think we can all learn from each other. So Mako's Glazes is one coat, is stroke and coat is semi-opaque. No, is watercolor. 2 coats is semi-opaque, 3 coats is opaque. So we're only going with 2 coats.
Okay, there's a question about, could you put a tiny bit of black on the edge of the brush to look like this watercolor technique? And
Ooh,
my thought is that
yeah.
you certainly could. You'd have to be careful not to get too much, because that black will really take over. I would
Yeah.
have to, like just put the black on afterward, but depending on your skill level and comfort level, you may like doing that on there. That'd be really cool looking.
I agree. Ooh, I like the way this is burnt on the outside.
This is such a good project for the blending and the watercolory look, because it like leaves are like that. That's kind of how they look.
I'm definitely going to leave these as a watercolor, and then I'm going to do 2 coats on these so that I get a little bit of more depth. I don't know about you guys, but I think this one almost looks like a marijuana plant. I think I did something funky on that.
You can fatten up your little leaves a little bit. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of leaves out there, though.
Yeah, definitely once I get the veining on here. Now, in the directions, it says to use a little black and the down to earth. I stuck with all down to earth, but I do think that I could have come back and hit a little bit more black. So I'm going to do that to make it pop a little bit, but I didn't want all black outlining, because to me, it was going to be a little too stark compared to all the rich browns and warmth colors. So I stuck with down to earth, but I am going to come back and maybe here and there add a little black to my down to earth to give it just a little bit more depth. So go ahead and continue painting your leaves. Maximum 2 coats on all of them. Like this one's supposed to have a leaf over here. Oh, laid it down wrong. Not what I wanted to do.
Let's see. Good point. If you did do the edge with black, you could pull it into the interior for shading, just like you showed us in another workshop.
Good point. Cool. Oh, yeah,
Thanks for paying attention, Robin.
Woohoo!
Bringing it back from the previous workshops.
Ding, 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 ding.
Very good. And that black is a nice little subtle touch. It gives it depth, like you said, and it does like help it show up a little bit more, because like in the middle of that leaf, that down to earth is not going to show up quite as much as the black would.
Right.
Excellent, brilliant people.
Yeah, I'm like what I'm doing on this one better than the first time I did it.
Well, that's the whole point of this class, right?
Yes.
Everybody learning the technique, and like that's what we always say in a class. Where do we teach? Like, you don't have to do it just like what we're doing, but we want you to learn the technique, and then you can do all the same kind of leaves if you want to. But the whole point of the class is the technique, learning how to use the product, and that's what this project is. It's a learning piece.
Different tools.
Yeah. You've learned how to use basic silk screening. You've we've helped you remember that you don't have to silk screen with black. There's so many times it's black silk screen. You can add color to it different ways. One of my favorite projects that Marcia did a while back was a background with just a light color silk screen, and then did a darker design on top. It was just pretty. It's just like a nice pattern.
Which one was that? I don't remember that.
It was the coloring book silk screen, and I forgot. I think she had pineapples on top, I think, or tiki faces, one or the other.
Okay.
Just having, even if you took leaves like this and just did really pale leaves silk screen all over the background, and then wrote like "give thanks" or something on the front, or did a giant pumpkin on there, you'd have the beautiful depth with the leaves in the background and then the pumpkin on the front in the bold colors. Yeah.
You little designer. Marcia taught us well.
Yeah, I come up with these things when I'm watching you paint it, but if I'm sitting in a room by myself having to think of something, it's never going to happen.
I have to agree with you on that. And I bet everybody does that. If a customer asks us, what to do, we can pop off an answer in
Mhm.
no time. But when it's our own, it's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What color do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. I find that like at CCSA convention when we're actually there in person, people have come up and said, well, how can I glaze this piece? And I come up with 20 ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Looks
All
good,
right.
Teddy.
Thank you. So I'm going to get, you guys keep working at your own pace. I'm just going to move on to the outlining. So what you're going to see. And then what I really think ties this all together is the fact that we splattered the down to earth on the piece. So if you have an old toothbrush, preferably not one you're using right now, or a stiff bristled brush, I have an old typewriter eraser pen. I used to use these all the time in my studio. I love them because they're so gritty that you can just easily erase any error. And then, of course, hardly anybody uses a typewriter. So these are rare to find, but I found a whole case of them in a garage sale. I'm hoarding them. But anyway, this is like nice stiff. So I'm going to dip it into my glaze and then run my finger across it and flick it after I get all my outlining done. And I am going to use a combination of black and the down to earth on my outlining. I think it'll just add a little bit more. Like you said, Krista, on the big leaf, the down to earth didn't quite pop as much as I wanted. Using my 10-aught liner. I love
Teddy,
the
Marjon Ceramics sells those little brushes you were just talking about.
no way. These?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're on the class, y'all. So Marjon Ceramics in Phoenix.
Ooh. How did you? Well, I'll
She
ask you
posted it in the
personally. I'm like,
chat.
oh my gosh! I'm like, how did you
I'm a
find them?
genius.
Because
I'm so smart.
wow,
Has nothing to do with
that,
the chat.
oh my gosh, I had
Thank
no
you for
idea
bringing
you
that
could
up.
even. No kidding, you guys. This is one of the best tools I've ever used because, like the other time when I was doing this, let's say I didn't want the stem right here. You can easily just rub over it. Can you see that? And it's just lightly taking off the stem, but it's not taking off my background color. I used this like crazy. Oh, I'm so excited to know that you carry those.
Yeah, Marjon, if you want to put a link to that, if you can, if you have time in the chat, that'd be great. If not, you can let me know and I can tell everybody later.
Wow. Yeah, we can put that in the email that's going to go out. Okay, again, you guys, you're going to get an email. There was about 200 people signed up. I think a lot of people watch it afterwards. Hopefully they'll get the email from us. But if you don't get it by, let's say Saturday morning, email Krista or myself and we'll send it to you again because it goes off into the Ethernet. All right, so we do our outlining there. I want you to see the sample. So for outlining, I'm going to, like I said, use the down to earth and a little bit of black. I'm going to show you guys a couple of things on outlining. I think most of you on this session already know how to do this. I've seen a lot of your faces before, yeah, kind of experienced. But for those that have not done much outlining, I do not think outlining is easy. It most definitely takes some practice. So I've got my detail, my 10-aught liner, going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to load in color. And when I load in color, I usually like sneak into the edge of this and pull my color out a little bit so I'm filling up my brush. If you want a very thin line, you're going to go perpendicular. Your brush is going to be straight up and down. I use my little finger to give my hand balance. And then I just use the tip of this and pull, and it allows me a thinner line. Okay. If you want a fatter line, you're going to load your brush and you're going to hold it more like a pencil. It's laying down and you can see that deep, rich line. And Krista and I both are more of a fan of the whimsical where it's not really outlined perfectly. We like to kind of like come off and, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly perfect.
Tell us that brush again that you're using, Teddy.
This is the 10-aught detailer. 10/0, 10-aught detailer. And this is in the reflection brush line because it has the acrylic handle, which I like so much.
I'll get the item number for that. It's actually not listed here on our instructions, so I'll get that and post it in the chat.
Oh, we didn't put a liner, huh? All right, and so this is what I was talking about, is I'm going to pull in a little bit of black here and there on my outlining. So I'm going to go more perpendicular and add in some depth. And then on the veining, I like to start at the bottom of the leaf, bring it all the way up to the top because that's how they actually grow. And I'm going to add in my little stem. So I have some black and I'm just going to bring in a little brown with it. And then add in my veins. And I'm barely touching it right now. I vary it up a lot. So fatter lines will be like holding it like a pencil. Fine lines is more on the tip and perpendicular.
I added the brushes in the chat so everybody can see. They did not make it onto our little sheet here. So it's basically the brushes we generally use in our projects, the 10-aught liner, the script liner, number 6 script liner, and then a soft fan. And for this one, we go with the number 8 because it's bigger and it gets that big background. Depending on what we're using, we do a number 4, number 6, or a number 8 soft fan usually.
And sometimes I just go rogue and do whatever I want.
We believe that.
Dylan, no. Oops. I am much happier this time around. Doesn't look like a marijuana leaf anymore, does it?
No, it looks very nice. It's like a beautiful fall leaf.
Thank you. That's all I want is attention.
Looks good. I like how on this one you have your brown, like different, the leaves are different colors. You know, your little maple leaves are green instead of brown like they were in your first one.
Yeah, I did not like it. And I was kind of working on the float and playing with it. So, okay. So keep doing that. I'm just going to explain a couple of things. So after we get our leaves painted and outlined, we're going to splatter. Well, we could also do this. I thought this was an interesting little touch. See how there's green around the rim of this? In the directions, it says take a squeegee and squeegee it on. I couldn't find my squeegee. So what I did is I took my script liner with a little water and then I used the green thumb. And then I basically just kind of smashed it on here like this so that it gave it a random uneven look. It was what she was going for. So it wasn't perfect at all, but I did like the way that it kind of pulled down and just added a little bit. The rim is black, but what I would recommend is you paint the 3 coats on the back first before you do the back, because you're going to come up over it. So the black is probably the last thing that I would do on this. Is we'll finish the front. You do 3 coats of the foundations, antique white on the back, and then edge your black. And when I do my edging, I load my brush, my fan brush, and I just pull it across like this. Because if I try to brush stroke this, it's uneven and random. But if I lay my brush down and pull it across my edge, I get it exactly where I want it. So since I started this, I'm going to finish this, and then I'll splatter it. I love the splattering on there. I think it just adds a whole new level.
Yeah, it just kind of gives it a rustic look too.
It does. And if you don't want to do green, if you're more of the cinnamon sticks kind of person, you go with that. You just do what you want.
Definitely.
And I love the fact that, who cares if it's really even on here?
I agree, because it's, it's all rusty fall looking. That could be like edges of leaves, it's fun.
Yeah. If you have a squeegee, you can try it like the directions, or you can just be sloppy and random like I did. But it just frames this artwork, adding a little bit of color. Of course, you could sponge it if you wanted to.
Or one of those little paint brushes on a stick, little foam brushes,
Yeah, you could dab it, whatever. I just thought this was really easy just to kind of slap it on there. I only did 1 coat. All right, I'm going to finish outlining because I'm assuming you guys are too. Next week is pottery camp. You want to tell them about that?
Yeah. Holiday pottery camp is next Thursday, October 14th. Monday, the 11th, which is this coming Monday, is the last day to register.
Oh, okay.
And so there are 3 projects that we're doing, and they're projects that are really cool. And it's like you look at them and you go, what they do? But it's easy enough that you're going to be able to show your customers how to do it. And they're going to like creating these projects. And they're also versatile, similar to this, in that you can take elements of some of those and turn them into something else. So it's fun. And we're using different products. We're using Elements Glazes, Jungle Gems, Spectaclear, Stroke and Coat, all sorts of fun stuff. So 3 projects. It's from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time on next Thursday, October 14th. So if you want to register, just go to our website under the events like you did for this and sign up. And there's a supply list. So everything that you need is there. If you don't have the product with you, already, because it's, maybe you have to get it in, you can still watch the class, and then we'll record it and you can watch it later if you don't have everything there, or use a different shape or something. But we're doing a oval platter. We're doing a round plate, just good basic round plate, and one of our faceted trees that we just love.
Cute things that you can customize, personalize, easy to replicate, good for workshops, classes.
Definitely. It gives you some different ideas. All really fun. And Teddy and I'll be teaching together. She'll be teaching a couple, I'll be teaching a project. Will be fun.
Dynamic duo. Or as they say in Mako, good and evil. And guess which one I am.
It's all fun. It'll be great. I know it's crazy. I mean, it's October, 7th today. By then we'll be halfway through October when we do that class. And, the holidays are here.
The year has gone by so fast.
It really has. When I was at Costco, I don't know, I guess it was mid-September. Of course they had Halloween things out, but I did not see anything Christmassy yet. Maybe, I don't remember, but I'm sure if I went today, they'd be all over the place.
Yeah. And already 40% off. That kills me. I'm like, no, it's not. That's just your way of making us think we're getting a good deal.
This looks good. It's amazing how the outline just really
It
gives life to
really
these.
pulls it together. It
Mhm.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I definitely like the loose outlines. So it is 1:06 and our class is supposed to go to 1. I know we took a little aside there talking about colorizing silk screens, which was
Okay.
very important and helpful.
All right.
So
Well,
maybe we
just-
could. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll wrap up. So you've got your outline. And now I'm going to take and then we did our outlining. We did our random little smudging on the edge. I'm going to take my stiff bristle brush, dip it in my down to earth toothbrush, any stiff bristle brush, you know, shader, whatever. And we're going to flick it all over this. And to me, for some reason, it just gives it that extra something that takes it to the next level. And that's what I like about this. There's several things on here that we did that is a little touch that you wouldn't think of, that just adds a little more. Oh, how pretty. I love that. Love that. Okay. And then to finish this, 3 coats of the antique white on the back, and then come back with your soft band brush, load it with some black, lay it on the rim, and then just pull it. Or not if you don't want to, but that just kind of, again, helps frame the edge of it. Here's the finished piece. So you can see there's a little black. You can put black on the handle in here too, if you want to make that pop. You have a dinnerware safe, beautiful project that you can use, give as a gift, do workshop, seminar, or just make it for yourself because you deserve the best. Does anybody have any questions? That went by fast, at least it did for me. Happy to answer any questions. Look in your inbox or your junk file or your spam files by Saturday morning, because I am definitely going to work on editing this video and getting a newsletter to you with information that we said we'd give you today.
Mhm.
Okay, last chance. If you have any questions, unmute yourself or write it in chat, or we're gonna hang up on you.
We appreciate y'all coming and always supporting us. It's fun to see your faces, or at least see your names on the screen.
Yeah. All right,
awesome.
my friend. Thank you.
Y'all run
very,
and
very
sign up
much.
for October holiday camp.
Yes. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you, ladies. Bye.
You. Bye-bye.